The rejected Omega hid her pregnancy until the Alpha King saw his twin heirs. Hello, everyone. Before we step into today's story of a rejected Omega, a hidden secret, and the moment an Alpha King discovers the two heirs he never knew existed, I have one small favor to ask. Please hit the subscribe button and turn on the notification bell so you never miss a new story from our channel. It only takes a moment, it is completely free, and it helps us continue bringing you powerful stories filled with destiny, heartbreak, courage, and love. Your support truly means the world to us. And before we begin, tell us in the comments where in the world you are watching from and what time it is where you are right now. We love seeing how far these stories travel and knowing who is joining us from across the world. Now, settle in, because some secrets can be hidden for years, but destiny always finds a way to bring them into the light. Let's begin today's story. Mom, why does that man have the same eyes as us? Alara Whitmore felt the world stop. 6 years of careful choices, quiet roads, changed names, and whispered prayers collapsed into that single innocent question. The Winter Moon Festival filled Blackthorn Square with silver lanterns and hundreds of families wrapped in heavy coats against the December cold, but Alara heard none of them. She only heard Lily. Her 6-year-old daughter stood beside her twin brother, staring through the crowd at the royal procession entering the square. Alara caught Lily's hand. "We're leaving." Elias frowned. "But Mom, now." She had come to the capital for one reason: sell enough winterroot and healing herbs to carry them through spring, then return to their little home before sunset. She had checked the royal schedule twice. King Rowan Blackthorn was supposed to be 50 miles north, attending the Frost Council. Yet the bells above the square suddenly rang 3 times. Every wolf around them lowered their head. Alara's heartbeat stumbled. Through the opening crowd came a tall man in a black winter coat, silver threading marking the shoulders of the Alpha King. 6 years had sharpened Rowan rather than softened him. His dark hair was shorter. His expression carried the controlled stillness of a man accustomed to entire rooms becoming silent when he entered them. Alara remembered that face. She remembered standing before it while the royal court watched her humiliation. Rejected, unwanted, unworthy of a king. She had survived those words. More importantly, she had built a life after them. "Stay close," she whispered, guiding the twins toward a narrow street between 2 shops. Then a frightened horse broke from the procession. People scattered as the animal rushed across the square, its reins trailing behind it. Lily froze directly in its path. "Lily!" Alara ran, but Rowan moved at the same instant. Before either could reach her, Lily lifted one small hand. "Easy," she whispered. Something changed. The horse slowed. Its frightened breathing softened, and it stopped only a few feet from her. Then an even stranger silence spread outward. Wolves who had been startled by the commotion suddenly became calm. Rowan stopped, his gaze fixed on Lily. Alara knew what he saw: pale skin, soft brown hair, and unmistakable silver-gray eyes. His eyes. Elias hurried forward and stepped protectively beside his sister. Rowan looked at him next. The same eyes stared back. For the first time, the Alpha King seemed unable to speak. Alara reached the children and pulled them close. Rowan's attention slowly lifted from the twins to her face. Recognition struck him. Alara. Her name sounded almost impossible on his lips. 6 years disappeared between them. Then Rowan looked again at the children, counting their age with the terrible precision she had always feared. His voice dropped to a whisper. Who was their father? Alara could have lied. For 6 years, lying had been easier than explaining why 2 children in a forgotten border town carried the unmistakable eyes of a king. But with Rowan standing only a few feet away, staring at Elias and Lily as if the world had quietly rearranged itself around him, every practiced answer disappeared. Their father is not part of their lives, she said. Rowan's expression tightened. That was not what I asked. Alara held Lily closer. The little girl sensed the tension and slipped her hand into her mother's. Elias remained beside them, serious and watchful. Rowan noticed that too. He noticed everything. He always had. And suddenly Alara was 22 again, standing beneath the silver arches of Blackthorn Palace on the night that had changed her life. 6 years earlier, the royal mating ceremony had gathered the most powerful families in the Northern Territories. Alara had not gone there expecting destiny. She had gone as an attendant from Moonvale, carrying trays, arranging winter roses, and staying invisible whenever nobles passed. Omegas like her were expected to be useful, quiet, and grateful. Her gift made people even more dismissive. Alara could calm frightened animals and ease the restless wolf inside someone overwhelmed by grief or fear, but Moonveil valued strength that could be displayed in a training yard. Gentleness earned no rank there. Then Rowan entered the ceremonial hall. He was 30 years old, newly crowned, surrounded by council members who spoke constantly of alliances, bloodlines, and the future of the throne. Alara remembered looking up only once. That had been enough. The bond arrived without permission. Warmth moved through her chest, deep and unmistakable, while every sound in the hall seemed to fade. Across the room, Rowan stopped walking. His silver-gray eyes found hers. For one impossible moment, the Alpha King looked less like a ruler and more like a man who had finally recognized something he had been searching for without knowing its name. Then the council began whispering. An Omega? Someone said. Another voice followed. From Moonveil? By sunrise, wonder had become politics. Rowan was expected to secure an alliance with a powerful Alpha family before winter. Choosing Alara could fracture negotiations already holding several territories together. She stood before the royal court while strangers discussed her worth as though she were not there. Rowan finally approached. Pain lived behind his controlled expression, but his words remained formal. Alara Whitmore, I cannot accept this bond. The room became terribly still. She could have begged. Everyone seemed to expect it. Instead, Alara lifted her chin. Then I accept your rejection. Something in Rowan's face broke for half a second. She turned before anyone could see her tears. 3 weeks later, in a healer's cottage nearly 80 miles from the capital, Alara stared at the elderly woman sitting across from her. Are you certain? She whispered. The healer smiled gently. Completely. Then she placed 2 fingers against Alara's wrist. And there is something else. You are not carrying one child, Alara. You are carrying 2. For several seconds, Alara could only stare at the healer. 2 children. The words should have frightened her. Yet beneath the uncertainty came something warmer, a quiet certainty that settled around her heart. Whatever the future demanded, these children would never grow up believing they were unwanted. Still, one truth remained unavoidable. Rowan deserved to know. 3 days later, Alara boarded the morning coach to Blackthorn City with a letter tucked inside her coat. She had rewritten it 7 times. None of the versions sounded right. How could a few lines explain that the bond he had rejected had left behind 2 new lives? By late afternoon, the palace towers appeared beyond the snow-covered hills. Alara nearly turned back. Instead, she pressed one hand over her abdomen and whispered, We can do difficult things. At the palace, a servant recognized her from the mating ceremony and reluctantly directed her toward the council wing. Rowan was meeting with his advisors, so Alara waited outside the carved oak doors, rehearsing the first sentence she would say when he emerged. Then she heard a voice from inside. The archives confirmed the possibility. Alara went still. Another counselor answered. Possibility is not proof. The Moonblood records were hidden for a reason. The unfamiliar term caught her attention. Moonblood. Alara moved closer without touching the door. An older voice continued, measured and cold. The ancient covenant speaks of twin heirs born when the royal Blackthorn line joins with the lost Omega bloodline. One child carries the command of the wolf. The other carries the grace of the moon. Alara's fingers tightened around her letter. And, if such children ever appear, someone asked. Silence followed. Then came the answer that changed everything. They must be brought under royal authority immediately. Powers like that cannot be allowed to develop beyond the crown's control. Alara stopped breathing. Another advisor objected, saying they would be children, not political assets. The first voice dismissed the concern. Children become adults. Adults with sacred influence become threats. Alara slowly backed away from the doors. She did not know whether the prophecy concerned her unborn babies. She did not even know whether Moonblood was real. But she understood something far simpler. The palace was already discussing how to control children who had not yet been found. If she told Rowan tonight, the truth would not remain between them. A king did not possess private knowledge. His council watched his decisions, his alliances, even his bloodline. Alara looked down at the letter in her trembling hand. She had come believing courage meant telling Rowan everything. Now courage required something harder. She tore the letter once, then again, and placed the pieces in the nearest fireplace. Before midnight, she was aboard a westbound coach. She traveled beyond Moonvale, beyond the royal roads, and finally settled in a small mountain town where nobody cared about rank. Months later, on a quiet spring morning, Elias and Lily entered the world minutes apart. Elias opened silver-gray eyes and immediately curled his tiny fingers around his mother's thumb. Lily barely cried. Instead, every restless wolf in the healer's house became strangely calm. The elderly midwife stared at the newborn girl, then at Alara. "What bloodline did you say your mother came from?" Alara felt the old warning return like winter beneath a closed door. "Why?" The woman lowered her voice. "Because I have only seen that kind of peace once before." The midwife's name was Martha Bell, and she had spent nearly 40 years delivering children in the mountain settlements west of Blackthorn territory. Very little surprised her anymore. Lily did. Martha looked toward the bedroom doorway, where a nervous young wolf who had been pacing the hallway now stood perfectly still, his breathing calm for the first time in hours. "My grandmother used to tell stories about children like her," Martha said quietly. Alara pulled both babies closer. "Stories are not proof." "No," Martha agreed. "And sometimes keeping a child safe matters more than proving anything." She asked no more questions, and Alara never forgot that kindness. The years that followed were not easy, but they were theirs. Alara rented a small cottage outside Cedar Hollow, a town surrounded by pine-covered hills nearly 300 miles from the capital. She grew healing herbs behind the house, worked at the village clinic, and slowly became the person neighbors visited when medicine alone could not settle a frightened heart. Nobody there cared that she was an Omega. They cared that she remembered which elderly neighbor needed firewood before a storm and which child was afraid of thunder. Elias and Lily grew among ordinary people who taught Alara something the royal court never had. Respect did not require rank. Elias was thoughtful and fiercely protective of his sister. At 5, he once stood between Lily and 3 older children who were teasing her strange silver eyes. Alara found him afterward, proud of himself. She knelt in front of him. "Protecting someone does not mean proving you are stronger." Elias frowned. "Then what does it mean?" "Making sure your strength gives someone else room to feel safe." He remembered. Lily was different. She collected injured birds, spoke softly to nervous horses, and somehow knew when people were sad, even when they smiled. Alara taught her something equally important. Being gentle does not mean you must always agree. Lily tilted her head. "I can say no. Always." The unusual signs became harder to dismiss as the twins grew. When Elias sensed danger, nearby wolves instinctively moved closer to him, not in fear, but as though responding to an ancient call they did not understand. Lily's gift was quieter. Once, during a full moon gathering, a young wolf became overwhelmed during his first transformation. Adults tried commands. Nothing helped. Lily walked toward him before Alara could stop her. She sat several feet away and began humming the lullaby Alara sang every night. Within moments, the young wolf relaxed. Alara felt cold despite the summer air. That night, after the twins were asleep, she opened the small wooden box containing everything she had kept from her old life. At the bottom lay a pendant that had belonged to her mother, a pale stone carved with 2 crescent moons facing each other. Alara had always believed it was decorative. Now she noticed something she had never seen before. Beneath the crescents was a tiny crown, the same symbol Martha had drawn 6 years earlier when describing the forgotten Moonblood stories. Alara closed the box. The next morning, she decided the children needed answers, but the only surviving records might be in Blackthorn City. She waited months for the safest opportunity. Then the Winter Moon Festival was announced, along with news that Rowan would be attending the Frost Council 50 miles north. Alara packed healing herbs to sell as an excuse for the journey and took the twins east. She believed she could enter the capital, search for clues, and leave unnoticed. She was wrong about only one thing. The king came home early. "Their father is not part of their lives," Alara repeated, but Rowan did not look away. Around them, the Winter Moon Festival slowly resumed, though curious faces remained turned toward the king and the 2 silver-eyed children. Rowan glanced at his guards. "Give us space." They obeyed immediately, guiding the crowd back without disturbing the twins. Alara noticed the restraint. 6 years ago, Rowan could have commanded an entire hall with one word. Today, he seemed careful not to frighten two children who did not know him. Elias noticed him watching. "Are you really the king?" Rowan lowered himself slightly, so they were closer to eye level. "Yes. Mom says kings are supposed to protect people." Alara closed her eyes for half a second. Rowan almost smiled. "Your mother is right." Elias considered that answer with the seriousness only a 6-year-old could manage. Lily stepped closer to Alara and whispered, "He feels sad." Rowan heard her. His expression changed. Alara took both children by the hand. "We should go." "Alara." Rowan's voice was quiet now. "Please." That word stopped her more effectively than an order could have. The Rowan she remembered had possessed endless commands and almost no permission to ask for anything. He gestured toward a small council house beside the square. Somewhere warm. No guards inside. No council. Just answers. 10 minutes later, Alara sat across from him beside a stone fireplace while Elias and Lily shared hot cider at a nearby table. Rowan watched them in silence. Elias added cinnamon to Lily's cup because she liked it sweeter. Lily pushed the larger cookie toward her brother because she knew he would pretend he did not want it. Ordinary gestures. 6 years of ordinary gestures Rowan had never seen. "They are mine," he finally said. It was not a question. Alara's fingers tightened around her cup. "Yes." Rowan inhaled slowly. The Alpha King who had faced councils, rebellions, and winters of failing harvests seemed suddenly uncertain what to do with his hands. "I have a son." His eyes moved toward Lily. "And a daughter." "You have 2 children who do not know you," Alara corrected. Pain crossed his face, but she refused to soften the truth. "Why did you not tell me?" "I tried." Rowan looked back at her. Alara told him about the letter, the journey to the palace, and the conversation she overheard outside the council chamber. With every sentence, his expression grew stiller. "You heard them discussing Moonblood? And what they would do if the children from that prophecy appeared?" Rowan leaned back. "You believed I would let them take our children? I did not know what you would do." Her answer landed between them. "The last time your council told you that duty required sacrificing something, you sacrificed me." Rowan said nothing. Alara's voice softened, but not her resolve. "I was pregnant, alone, and surrounded by people who believed power gave them ownership. I chose the only thing I could control. I protected them." Rowan looked toward the twins again. "You stole 6 years from me." Alara met his eyes. "And you gave me 1 night to learn what your throne does to anything it fears." Silence filled the room. Then, Lily suddenly turned from the window. Beneath the sleeve of her coat, the crescent-shaped mark on her wrist had begun to glow with pale silver light. Elias stared at his own wrist. The same symbol was appearing there. Rowan rose slowly. For the first time since seeing his children, recognition became fear. "Alara," he whispered, "we need to leave this building." Rowan crossed the room and closed the curtains before the silver light could reach the windows. "Keep their wrists covered," he said. Alara immediately pulled Lily's sleeve down, then Elias's. "You are frightening them." Rowan looked at the twins and forced the urgency from his face. "I am sorry. Neither of you has done anything wrong." Lily studied him carefully. "Then why are you scared?" Rowan had no answer ready. Before he could find one, 3 measured knocks sounded at the door. "Your Majesty," an elderly voice called. I felt the awakening. Rowan went still. He opened the door only after telling the twins to remain beside Alara. An old man entered wearing the gray robes of the royal archivists. His name was Silas Wren, keeper of records older than the Blackthorn dynasty itself. His gaze found Elias and Lily, then dropped immediately to one knee. So the covenant was true. Rowan shut the door. "Stand up, Silas. They are children, not relics." The archivist rose slowly. Alara appreciated Rowan's words, but her attention remained fixed on Silas. "What covenant?" Silas looked toward Rowan for permission. Alara noticed and spoke first. "Do not ask him. Ask me. They are my children." Something almost approving passed through the old man's eyes. "The Twin Moon Covenant," he said. "More than 4 centuries ago, the strongest Alpha rulers did not govern alone. There existed another bloodline, remembered as Moonblood Omegas. Their gift was not dominance. They could quiet the wildest instincts of our kind without forcing submission." Alara thought of frightened animals beneath her hands. She thought of Lily humming to an overwhelmed young wolf. "My mother had this symbol." She removed the pale pendant from beneath her coat. Silas stared at the two crescents and tiny crown. Where did you get that? It belonged to her family. His face lost color. Then the records were right. Rowan stepped closer. Explain. Silas pointed carefully toward Elias. The first heir carries the call. Wolves recognize his presence and instinctively gather around him. Then he looked at Lily. The second carries the grace. She can restore calm where instinct has overwhelmed reason. Elias glanced at his sister. So we have magic. Silas smiled gently. Something older than what most people call magic. Alara shook her head. They are 6 years old. Whatever abilities they have, they will not become tools for anyone. Agreed, Rowan said immediately. Silas's expression darkened. The council may not agree. Some families have spent generations ensuring Moonblood remained a legend. Alara felt the room grow colder. Why? Silas hesitated. Because history was rewritten. Moonblood Omegas were never weak servants beneath alpha rulers. They were their equals. Rowan stared at him. Silas continued. And when the last twin heirs appeared, they challenged the belief that dominance alone gave anyone the right to rule. A bell sounded outside. Once. Twice. Then a third time. Silas turned toward the window. The royal council has been summoned. Rowan's jaw tightened. I did not summon them. Alara understood before anyone spoke. Someone else had seen the silver light. Rowan looked at his children, then at Alara. There is a private passage beneath this building. I can get you out of the city. Alara stood, but she did not move toward the door. 6 years ago, she had survived by running. Now Elias and Lily were watching her, waiting to learn what courage looked like. No, she said quietly. Rowan blinked. Alara lifted her chin. I spent 6 years teaching my children that being gentle does not mean living afraid. We are done hiding. The royal council chamber had not changed in 6 years. Alara remembered the towering windows, the silver banners, and the long oak table where powerful people once discussed her future as though she had no voice in it. This time, she entered holding Lily's hand while Elias walked beside her. Rowan stayed close, but he did not lead her. Every council member rose. Their attention moved immediately to the twins. Alara felt Lily squeeze her fingers. You stay with me, she whispered. Both of you. Lord Aldrich Vale, the oldest council member, stepped forward. Your Majesty, we have received troubling reports. 2 children displayed the sacred marks in a public square. Rowan's voice remained calm. They have names. Elias and Lily. Aldrich barely acknowledged the correction. If they are what the archives suggest, they belong under royal protection. They already have protection, Alara said. Several counselors looked surprised that an Omega had spoken without invitation. Aldrich turned toward her. This is a matter of the crown. They are my children. That makes it my matter. Silence followed. Rowan glanced at Alara, and for the first time she saw no discomfort in his expression when she challenged his counsel. Only respect. Aldrich placed an old document on the table. Royal law states that recognized heirs of the reigning Alpha King must be raised within the palace and educated under council supervision. Alara's stomach tightened. Rowan read the document without touching it. A law written 200 years ago. A law nonetheless. Aldrich looked toward the twins. Their abilities could affect every pack in the Northern Territories. Such power cannot remain uncontrolled. Elias stepped closer to his mother. Rowan noticed. His expression changed. There is that word again, he said. Controlled. Aldrich frowned. Your Majesty? Rowan slowly removed the black-silver signet from his right hand. The room became completely still. 6 years ago, this council told me stability required rejecting the woman destiny had placed before me. I listened. His gaze found Alara. I called fear duty and obedience wisdom. Alara felt something ache inside her, not because the past had disappeared, but because he was finally naming it correctly. Rowan placed the royal signet on the table. I will not make that mistake with my children. Aldrich stared at the ring. The heirs belong to the crown. Rowan's voice became quieter. No child belongs to a crown before they belong to themselves. A murmur traveled around the table. Another. Counselor stood. If you refuse royal law, the packs could challenge your authority. Then they may challenge it. You could lose the throne. Rowan looked at Elias and Lily. Lily was watching him with those solemn silver-gray eyes. Then the throne can learn to live without me. Alara had imagined many versions of this meeting during 6 years of hiding. In none of them had Rowan chosen uncertainty over control. Aldrich's confidence finally faltered. Silas Wren stepped forward from the rear of the chamber carrying a weathered book. There is something the council should see. He opened it to a faded page bearing 2 crescent moons beneath an ancient crown. The law Lord Aldrich quoted is not the oldest law governing these children. Aldrich's face hardened. Silas looked directly at Alara. The original covenant says the twin heirs cannot be claimed by any throne. They choose whom they serve when they come of age. Alara stared at the page. Beneath the symbol was another mark, almost identical to the pendant her mother had left her. Silas, she whispered, what does the crown beneath the moons mean? The old archivist hesitated. That is the part of history someone worked very hard to erase. Before he could explain, a deep ceremonial bell sounded from the courtyard. Silas turned pale. The moon assembly has begun early. Rowan looked toward the windows. Hundreds of wolves were gathering outside, and somewhere among them, a strange, restless energy had already begun to rise. The moment Alara stepped into the courtyard, she knew something was wrong. Hundreds of wolves had gathered beneath the winter moon, but the usual ceremony had dissolved into confusion. Restlessness moved through the crowd like an invisible current. People who had been laughing minutes earlier now struggled to control their breathing. Some covered their ears as if hearing a sound no human ear could detect. Others backed away from friends and family, frightened by instincts suddenly growing louder than reason. Mom, Elias whispered. They are scared. Alara felt it too. Not anger. Fear. Deep, spreading fear feeding upon itself. Rowan moved ahead of them. Everyone remained calm. His voice carried across the courtyard with natural authority, but instead of settling the crowd, the royal dominance seemed to intensify the strange energy. Rowan stopped. Surprise flashed across his face. Silas appeared beside Alara. This is not natural. What is happening? She asked. Something is amplifying their wolf instincts. Another wave of tension passed through the gathering. Rowan's shoulders stiffened. Alara knew that look. His wolf was responding too. For years, people had praised Alpha Kings because their instincts were stronger than everyone else's. Tonight, that strength had become a vulnerability. 2 royal guards approached cautiously. Your Majesty, perhaps you should return inside. Rowan shook his head. Not while my people are afraid. He tried another command, softer this time, but his breathing had already changed. Alara stepped toward him. Rowan, stay back. No, his silver-gray eyes met hers. Beneath the king, beneath the authority, she saw a man fighting himself. Alara remembered every frightened animal she had calmed as a girl, every patient whose fear had eased beneath her hands. Strength could not always be answered with greater strength. Sometimes pressure only created more pressure. She approached slowly. You do not have to control everything, she said. Rowan's hands relaxed slightly. I am supposed to protect them. Then start by trusting yourself enough to stop fighting. Alara placed her palm gently over his chest. His heartbeat raced beneath the fabric of his coat. Come back, she whispered. Rowan closed his eyes. Lily suddenly slipped from Elias's side and took Alara's free hand. Mom, I can feel him. Alara looked down. Lily's wrist glowed beneath her sleeve. Elias stepped beside his sister and took her other hand. His mark answered with silver light. The effect was immediate. Rowan drew one slow breath. Then another. The tension left his shoulders. Across the courtyard, several wolves turned toward Elias as though hearing a distant familiar call. They stopped moving. Lily began humming the same simple lullaby Alara had sung in Cedar Hollow. The melody was barely louder than the winter wind, yet calm spread outward in widening circles. One wolf relaxed. Then another. Families reached for one another. Frightened breathing slowed. Within minutes, the courtyard became still. Nobody had been forced to kneel. Nobody had been commanded into silence. They had simply remembered themselves. Rowan opened his eyes and looked at Alara, then at their children. Awe replaced fear. Silas's voice trembled behind them. That is what the old records meant. Alara turned. About Moonblood? He nodded. Alpha power was never meant to rule through dominance alone. Moonblood existed to balance it, not by making the wolf weaker, but by helping the person remain stronger than the wolf. Around them, hundreds of people were beginning to understand the same truth. The Omega bloodline history had called fragile had just accomplished what royal authority could not. Lily looked up at Alara. Did we do something good? Alara knelt and pulled both children close. You helped people remember they had a choice. Rowan lowered himself beside them. For once, the Alpha King did not look like the most powerful person in the courtyard. He looked humbled by what power truly meant. Then Silas stared toward the ancient stone throne at the far end of the courtyard. Silver light had begun tracing symbols across its base. 2 crescents appeared first. Beneath them emerged a crown. Alara's breath caught. It was her mother's symbol. Silas whispered the words as though speaking a truth forbidden for centuries. That mark does not belong to the Blackthorn dynasty. For several heartbeats, nobody moved. The ancient throne stood beneath the winter moon, while silver lines continued spreading across its stone, revealing 2 crescents surrounding a small crown. Alara slowly reached beneath her coat and removed her mother's pendant. The symbols matched perfectly. Silas stared between them. The Blackthorns did not create this throne, he said. They inherited it. Rowan looked at him. From whom? Silas turned toward Alara. From her ancestors. A murmur passed through the courtyard. Alara barely heard it. Her entire life, she had been told that Omega blood meant standing lower, speaking softer, accepting less. Yet beneath, centuries of dust and rewritten history lay another truth. Her bloodline had not served beside kings. It had helped build the world those kings inherited. Rowan stepped toward the gathered council. Then tonight we correct more than one mistake. He looked at Alara, but he did not reach for her. 6 years ago, I believed being king meant choosing duty over my own conscience. I rejected someone who deserved the freedom to stand beside me because I feared what others would think of an Omega beside the throne. His voice carried through the courtyard. I cannot return the years my choice cost her. I cannot ask forgiveness and pretend the asking erases the wound. Alara felt tears gather, but she did not look away. Rowan removed the royal signet he had reclaimed before leaving the council chamber and held it loosely in his palm. Then, before nobles, guards, families, and their 2 children, the Alpha King lowered himself to one knee. A collective breath moved through the crowd. Alara stared at him. Rowan had once stood above her while declaring that he could not accept their bond. Now he looked up at her without command or expectation. Alara Whitmore, I will not claim you. You are not a prize, a prophecy, or something destiny owes me. His voice softened. I am asking whether you would choose me, knowing I still have much to repair. Lily squeezed her mother's hand. Elias watched Rowan with solemn approval. Alara thought of Cedar Hollow, of difficult winters, of 2 babies asleep against her chest, of every mile she had traveled without him. Love could redeem, she realized, but redemption was not forgetting. It was choosing to become worthy of what had once been lost. She offered Rowan her hand. Yes, but beside you, never beneath you. Rowan took it gently. Beside me. Elias smiled first. Lily followed, throwing her arms around both of them until Alara laughed through her tears. Around the courtyard, nobody bowed because they had been ordered to. They lowered their heads because they understood what they had witnessed. Not an alpha claiming an omega. A family choosing one another freely. Then Lily suddenly pulled away. Mom. She was staring at the throne. The silver symbol had changed again. Beneath the twin crescents, letters appeared in a language Alara had never learned, yet somehow understood. She walked toward the throne as though an old memory were calling her home. When her fingers touched the stone, warm silver light spread beneath her palm. Elias hurried beside her. Why does it know you? Alara could not answer. Silas approached slowly, wonder replacing every trace of fear. Because the Moonblood line was never merely a sacred Omega bloodline. Rowan stood beside Alara. What were they? Silas looked toward the ancient crown glowing beneath her hand. The first guardians of every wolf kingdom. Lily pointed toward another symbol appearing below it, a doorway surrounded by stars. What is that? Silas went silent. Alara felt the stone gently pulse beneath her fingers, almost like a heartbeat awakening after centuries of sleep. Somewhere far beneath the palace, something answered. A low bell rang once from underground, though no living person had touched it. Rowan met Alara's eyes. The twins moved closer between them. Their family had finally found one another. But beneath their feet, an older story had just opened its eyes.